All right, we're going to start our day one with making poached pears. And I actually like to make my poached pears a day ahead and let them cool. So, first thing we need to do is actually make a flavored liquid to poach in. If it was something savory, like if we were going to poach salmon, we could do dill, lemon, peppercorns, and salt. But because we're going to be doing a dessert, we want to do something sweet. So what we want to start out with is some sort of juice. So you guys have, I think, a grape juice. Um, it's a little sweet, but we're going to go ahead and we need to make sure we have enough of that liquid. So in the smallest pot you have, again, maybe check it first, see if your 2 pears fit in there. You're going to add your grape juice. We're going to add a 1/4 cup of granulated sugar. And then you have what are called cloves. These are whole cloves, and we want to use them because we're just going to flavor the liquid. If we were to use a powder, it would kind of get all over the fruit, and that's not what we're looking for. So we're looking for about 8 of these, and if you have any extra, just keep them in the cabinet. They will last for quite a while. So put those cloves in there. And then we have something really neat, used a lot in Asian cooking. It's called star anise, and you have one of those, and I'll show you a couple. They actually have these little pods in them as well. So you're just going to take, I'm just going to do one and pop that in there. You'll smell it. It does have kind of that black licorice smell. But it is actually really good. Now, I did tell you in the recipe you're going to need some extra water, but we're going to hold off on that water because we want to get our pears in here first and see how much water. We don't want to dilute down that juice too much. So take this pot, put it on the stove on a low heat, and what we want to do is just to start to dissolve that sugar. Okay, while that poaching liquid is warming up, let's go ahead and prepare our pears. So you have 2 pears. When you actually poach a pear, they're actually better to be slightly on the underripe side because you don't want it falling apart. We're not cooking the fruit to a mush. We want to leave the fruit as whole. So when you're peeling it though, we're exposing that flesh that is going to allow the liquid to cook. And actually, it's really quite pretty. You'll get to see tomorrow is that the grape juice will actually color the outside of the pear and give it some really neat color when you go to cut it. So what we want to do is, you can see we want to get all of the skin. Now I'm not cutting any of the stem off, and I'm not cutting it in half or anything. So what you want to do is get all that skin off. And what we're going to do is we are going to remove the bottom of the pear. So I'm just going to use, if you have a melon baller, this is a 1/2 teaspoon. I'm going to go into the bottom, and they're a little slippery, and I'm just going to make like a little circle, and if I have to go back a couple times, and just remove that little stem that's there. Now, the pear is still going to have some seeds in it, okay? But after they're cooked, we're going to cut them, and you'll be able to expose the seeds then. So let me do both my pears, and they're a little slippery, like I said, so be careful because you are working with your vegetable peeler. Now, if you don't have a vegetable peeler, use a small paring knife and just cut off as little bit of that skin as you can. Try to leave as much as the flesh as possible. A smaller knife, what's called a paring knife, is better for peeling the skins. A lot of times, if you're trying to cut herbs and things, you want to use a larger knife. So for something like this where you're holding it in your hand, a small paring knife works best. Okay, so that's all the sides. And I'm just going to come down here to the bottom. Take it once across. Okay, and then there you'll see, I'm just going to go in with my 1/2 teaspoon, take a little bit out, and then I'm going to go down one more time inside that hole It just kind of gives it a little spot where those juices can go in and start to cook the inside. All right, let's check on our poaching liquid and see about adding our pears. So you can start to see our poaching liquid is starting to come to a little bit of a simmer, and I'm on a 4, or I'm really on a low heat, and so I don't really want to, I don't want this to come to a boil, okay? So just enough to warm it up, stir it around. You can actually start to smell the cloves are starting to flavor that liquid and that star anise. So the sugar is dissolved. And then what we're going to do now is you're going to take your 2 whole pears, and I lay them down on their side, get them in there side by side, and then I'm going to go ahead and add some more liquid that I can, maybe about another cup. And I might have to stir the pears a couple of times, and I'm going to show you how we're going to do it. So move that water around just a little bit. And then what I'm going to do, the biggest thing with this is a couple of things you're looking for. You're not bringing it up to a boil. You really want to keep it less than a simmer. So you want just little tiny bubbles breaking the surface, okay? So you need to keep it low. So I'm just going to heat it up till I see those little bubbles and break it down. And you don't want to overcook those pears, okay? You're not looking for them to be mushy. We want them to stay whole, and then they're going to just be soft. So you'll want to test them with a paring knife also. So lid on, let them cook, and I'll see about how long it's going to take. What I want to show you guys, very carefully open your lid, I want to show you the bubbles breaking the surface. So I have actually turned this down, my stove down to the lowest heat possible. Again, we don't want these pears falling apart. We don't want to overcook them. I suggest you go in about every 5 minutes and roll your pears a little bit, stir them up a little bit so that the poaching liquid gets on all the sides. I'm going to say it's going to take, again, on this really low heat, about 30 minutes, but I'll let you know when I am done. It's been about 20 minutes, and again, I came in every 5, rotated those pears, flipped them around really carefully just to make sure all the sides were covered in that poaching liquid. And what I want to show you is go ahead and take a small little paring knife, and I'm going to go into that fattest part of that pear and just see, and it really does easily go in, and then it has a little bit of resistance towards that middle. I'm going to say they're done. So 20 minutes, because what's going to happen is we're going to leave them sitting in this poaching liquid for about another 30 minutes, and we're going to leave it uncovered because we actually want it to cool down, and it's not going to evaporate anymore off the heat. And then what we're going to do is we're going to store these overnight so that they really absorb that poaching liquid. So I'm going to show you what I have set up actually to rest them in. So it can be just a Tupperware, but I'm actually going to use another type of bag. And that way the poaching liquid completely is submerged around them. So I'll come back. I'm going to give this liquid about 30 minutes, maybe even longer, to just cool down, because if it's too hot, the heat is going to just melt that bag. So at this point, we're done, and we'll be back soon. So you can see that the mixture has cooled down, and honestly, I let it sit for about 45 minutes. You'll start to see the color of the pear is taking on the color of that juice. So I, again, like to let them rest overnight. So what I've done is I have a Tupperware, and I'm doing whatever bag I have. If you have a Ziploc bag, that will work as well. And I'm putting the bag inside, and what you want to do is go ahead and gently put your pears in the bag, and if you see any of those cloves and the star anise, you can take those out. They can be a little strong sitting in there over the night. So I'm just not going to pour all the liquid, so because they're sitting on the bottom. I'm going to pour the liquid. And I can see the cloves are sitting right there in the bottom. Make sure those go in the trash, not down the garbage disposal. Okay, then what I'm going to do is very carefully, and if you take, here, let me see, if you take your bag and you get all of that air out and twist it, then the pears are completely surrounded by that juice and not gonna get like a little bubble mark on the top. So I'm gonna make sure I got all the air out. I just tied it in a little knot. I'm gonna put it in there, and those pears are gonna sit overnight, and we'll make our crepes and finish our dessert tomorrow. Okay, let's go ahead and make our crepe batter because it does need to sit in the refrigerator for about 30 minutes. Now, you don't ever want to let it set overnight because it does have a raw egg in it and it won't last. So I happen to have like a little smoothie making machine. This is going to be big enough. If you don't have a blender, you can just do a bowl with a whisk by hand. I like the blender because it does make sure all the lumps come out of the batter. So I'm going to go ahead and start this. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to add all my liquid. So this is 1 1/4 cups of whole milk. I'm going to add that 1 egg. And then I have my 1 tablespoon of melted and cooled butter. And it can even be coconut oil or a little bit of other type of oil. I'm going to add my vanilla and just a pinch, 2 of that salt. Again, a little bit of salt in sweet helps. Last thing I'm going to go ahead and add carefully is, if I can get in there, that 1 level cup of all-purpose flour. There it goes. And by putting the flour in last, it's going to blend better in my machine. So there we go. All right, I'm going to go blend this up and I'll show you what it looks like when we're done. So the blender only took like 30 seconds to get this all mixed in. You just always want to kind of stop it, pulse it, make sure you don't have any flour stuck up on the sides. It's like a really loose pancake batter. It kind of looks like a milkshake for consistency. So again, I'm just going to leave it in this container because it has a little pour spout lid. I'm not going to pour it from the lid. We will be measuring it. But again, you can pour it into a Tupperware and you're going to put this in the refrigerator for at least 30 minutes up to 8 hours, but not any longer before. So our crepe batter has chilled for 30 minutes and I just took it out. And we have a small 8-inch Teflon fry pan. So you're definitely looking for something that's going to be non-stick. I'm going to use my 1/4 cup dry measuring cup because it just tends to be the easiest. At school, we have little ladles, 2-inch ladles, and that makes it easier to come out of the bowl. When you get really good at making crepes, you can actually just go right from your pour spout to eyeball your 1/4. But again, if you go too thick, then you won't get that crepe nice and thin. So I did want to show you, I've set up a couple things over here. I put down one of my kitchen towels. We do need to use some sort of spray, and I'm going to use just a light spray pan. The one thing you need to be careful with is that you are not spraying an aerosol over a flame. Okay, it can actually ignite the flame and come back and explode on you. So anytime you spray, you should always have what I call a spray station, which is you're taking your pan off, spray it off the flame over the towel, not over the floor, because then you're just putting grease on the floor and then creating another safety hazard. Plus, then I'll use the towel to put my quarter cup measuring cup down on. So you want to heat this pan. I'm on a 4 again, on a medium low. You want to get it really nice and hot. Now you don't want to spray and then heat up the oil. Then the oil's just going to burn. So you want to heat the pan up first, spray, and then we'll go immediately into adding the batter. So each time you get done making a crepe, you're going to want to either put it off to the side. I tend to put a little piece of parchment in between each crepe, and then that way they won't stick. Or you can set up a station and go ahead and start to eat them. Put some Nutella, bananas, strawberries, whipping cream, serve it over ice cream, have some fun with them. So take your pan off, give it just a little bit of a spray, go back on the heat. Then I'm going to take my quarter cup, I'm going to put some batter. And I'm going to hold the pan, because you immediately, after you pour, you're going to shift the pan and you're rotating it all the way around up the edges of the pan so that until basically stops running, and then you're going to put it right back on the heat. Now what you're looking for is that the edges, when you put the batter in, the raw batter is shiny, so you're watching it. It's going to start to go dull very quick. And then you're also looking for the edges of the crepe to kind of curl in on itself. If it's too high and it's burning, go ahead and turn it down, work on a lower heat. Just work a little slower. My pan happens to have these 3 little bumps. I try to avoid those when I'm making my crepes. You can also make them much larger depending if you have a larger Teflon pan. The larger you are, the larger your crepe. You'll have to increase your batter slightly. But as you can start to see, I have a little Teflon rubber scraper. It's starting to lift. And this is why I avoid these little bumps right there that tends to sometimes stick. You can actually use these, and I fill them with even a chicken asparagus mushroom with like an Alfredo, and bake it. So it's loose. I'm going to flip it, uncurl my edges, and I like to make sure that it's nicely toasted on both sides. And we'll just continue that process. So again, because we're going to eat them right from the stage, we're going to either stuff them with, say, some whipped cream and those poached pears, or again, Nutella, bananas, those are my favorite. You want to make sure that you are browning this on both sides. Okay, and look, it just slides out. I'm going to put it right here on the side. Let's do that one more time. So again, off heat, quick spray, back on. I'm going to go a little shy on that quarter cup into the middle of the pan and give it a quick little spin. Try to do it so you guys can see. Fill it up. Just keep spinning and spinning and spinning until you see your batter not moving anymore. Back on the heat. You start to get going really quick on these. Now I like to eat the crepes hot, but they can be chilled. So you could fill them, roll them, and put them in a Ziploc bag and stick them in the refrigerator for a snack later on. Let's show this one. You can start to see it's actually starting to curl right here around the edges. It's all gone a little dull. You can just simply, really carefully lift. You can start to see if you like them browner or not. And I'll let it get this one on just a little bit browner. Go in, flip it, push it down a little bit lightly into the pan. I'm kind of trying to uncurl it. Usually crepe pans don't have a deep edge, so you won't get that little edge. That's it. We'll come back and I'll show you how to plate your crepes. So I want to show you how we're going to go ahead and assemble the crepes. And really, you guys, you can roll them. I'm going to show you how to really slice them. So these are the poached pears, right? They've been sitting in that poaching liquid. And what I'm actually going to do is open it up inside the Tupperware. So I capture those juices. And you can now even put those juices back in a small sauce pot and bring it up to a boil and simmer it, and it will thicken, and you can actually make yourself a little syrup if you want to go over them. So I'm just gonna lightly pour them out, and you'll start to see they actually have the same color as the liquid. Let me get a little slotted spoon. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one out, and really this is enough to serve 4, or if you want, one person can have a whole pear, but a half a pear works per person. All right, now what you want to do is go ahead and cut the pear right down the middle, as close to that stem as you can. You'll see the inside. Look at that. Unfortunately, I don't know that it shows enough, but it's kind of got this little rim of color. So now what we need to do, I'm just going to put that other one back in. Now what you want to do very carefully is there is a seed kind of pocket right here and a little vein up to the stem. And what you want to do, because they are a little slippery, is I'm just going to use the tip of my small little paring knife and kind of cut a little bit of a V into the pear. And I just don't want to cut it too much, because I'm actually going to serve it, I think, as a whole pear, but I do want to scoop this little portion out, because you don't want to serve that. So there it goes, very carefully, and just cut off the end. Okay. Then always remember, cut flat side down, and I'm going to cut this kind of like we do with the onion when we're going to dice it. I'm going to cut it so that I'm leaving it intact up here, but that I'm going to cut it really thinly in little lines straight down. And what you want to do is make your cuts nice and thin. If it falls apart, it falls apart. But what we're going to try to do, it came apart up at the top, I cut the stem out, is we're going to try to fan it. Maybe not one more. Okay. So let's take my plate. Let's see if I can get it over a little bit. And I'm going to take one of the crepes and I'm going to put it on. I'm going to take the pear, and I'm actually going to put the pear on the inside. I'm going to put that fan side up and then kind of fan the pear so it kind of looks like a flower on the plate. And what you kind of get is, you can see from the poaching liquid, it's really kind of pink here, and then it goes to the white. Now, if you had some chocolate, you could also spread some of that Nutella or make that chocolate spread. But I'm just going to actually fold this side over and that side over. Kind of make it look like a little cone and see if I can get that to stick. If I have to, I'm going to roll the end underneath so it sticks. Let's see if I can turn that so you guys can see that. Look at that. It's really pretty. And then I'm going to hit it just for decoration with a little bit of that powdered sugar. That's it. It's simple. Again, you can drizzle more chocolate over it, serve it with a scoop of vanilla ice cream. Maybe I'll look in the freezer. We'll try to find that. So have fun. Enjoy.